Happy Monday, all you minties. Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for an advanced look at the Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1 from Marvel Comics. So let's get started. A big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on November 22nd. So here we have your very first Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus. I remember on the Saturday streams people asking me when is it coming, and I remember David being on one of the Saturday streams and he was like, that's a good idea. Oh my goodness, I think that was probably 2 years ago or so, and finally here it is, the very first Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus. So speaking of direct market and book market, what we are looking at here is your standard edition cover. This is the one that's going to be available everywhere. On the left-hand side is your direct market cover. That cover is drawn by the legendary Dave Cockrum, and your standard edition cover, that one is drawn by Sal Buscema, our pal Sal, and that is the cover to issue number 1. I do find it interesting that it is TV's new sensation. I know they're talking about Spider-Man, but Moon Knight had a Disney Plus show. Direct market cover, again, has a different spine than your standard edition cover, and I just wanted to show that. Because when people ask me, sometimes they base what they buy on the spines. Alright, let's shift the focus back to this book. So here we have the cover to issue number 1. And this takes me back to finding comic book stores and finding this issue. I thought the character of the tarantula was a cool design. And I thought this was his first appearance. I remember asking my mom and dad, can they buy me a copy of it? I realized it was $5. I realized it was behind the counter. And that was at the comic strip, I think it was what the name of the place was. And they were used to me buying stuff from Dr. Comics at the flea market for like 10 cents or a quarter. And sometimes I could even get deals for 5 cents. So they were like, no. So I remember saving my money and buying this issue. Later to find out that it was not his first appearance, and I should have read this, featuring the return of the tarantula. What was wrong with me? Alright, here is the spine, Marvel Omnibus, the Spectacular Spider-Man, Mantlo, Sal Buscema, and Mooney. Those are the 2 big artists on the book, Sal Buscema and Jim Mooney, and here is that piece of art right there, and Volume 1. So this does have the new designs of the spines. On the back of the book, holy crap, that is a lot of issues. The back of the book is mainly, there's like no synopsis. It's just the cover art, and then what it collects, the ISBN with the price, and the price being $125. Alright, underneath the dust jacket is the actual logo to the Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus, and Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1, love seeing that. And then the back of design of the book, which they've been using in Amazing Spider-Man. Alright, we're gonna be opening this up, talking about the stories collected in here, showcasing the artwork, look at the build of the book, and where it all fits into the reading order of Spider-Man, because this is really the 3rd series of Spider-Man that was coming out monthly. So, let's go ahead and get this open. Alright, opening up the omnibus, we have some black end paper there. Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, what it's collecting. Bill Mantlo, Sal Buscema, Jim Mooney, the people behind the book that put all this together. The image of the spider lizard right there. What the heck is that? Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1 here. All the credits to the people that wrote all of this. Penciled, inked, lettered, colored, and edited at the time. Love that. And the table of contents telling you where you're going to find each of the stories in what page, including not just 1, not 2, but, where's the 3rd one? 3 introductions by Ralph Macchio and Mark Guggenheim and Mary Jo Duffy. So these were taken from the original Marvel Masterworks. So this does collect issues 1 through 42 of the Spectacular Spider-Man. It also collects the very first annual, which of course crossed over from Amazing Spider-Man Annual 13, which you'll find here. And then Fantastic Four issue 218, which is a crossover with issue 42, the final issue of Spectacular Spider-Man that is in here. So the full title was Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. The book, by the way, has 928 pages. So, as the story goes, and you can find out through the introductions, at the time that this came out, there was already 2 Spider-Man titles, Amazing Spider-Man and then Marvel Team Up. Marvel Team Up was your, hey, this character is guest starring on this Spider-Man book. So it was always Spider-Man and somebody else. And that stuff's not been collected in Epic nor in Omnibus format. It's only been available in Marvel Masterworks and I think some Essentials. I know this stuff has been available in Essentials because I had them. This stuff has also been available in Marvel Masterworks, and this is pretty much the first 3 Spectacular Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks. And the way that this took shape, the way that this came about, was the character of Spider-Man was so popular, they wanted to give Jerry Conway another series, another Spider-Man series. That's what Stan Lee wanted to do. However, at that time, Jerry Conway did not want to take Len Wein's job of writing Amazing Spider-Man, so hey, now's a perfect time to start a new series. So they kicked it off in September of 1976 with issue number 1. So that was around the time that Amazing Spider-Man, I think it was issue 163, was coming out. Meaning if you have the Omnis, it can be found in the 5th Omnibus. So that's really cool that they kind of timed it with this. What's also really cool, if you are into the Spider-Man reading orders, is that this can be followed by the Roger Stern Omnibus. This collects Spectacular Spider-Man 1 through 42. The Amazing Spider-Man by Roger Stern Omnibus, or rather just Spider-Man by Roger Stern, collects issues 43 to 61 or 62 of Spectacular Spider-Man and his Amazing Spider-Man run. So this lines up perfectly with that. Of course, also perfectly with the Spectacular Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks Volumes 4 and 5. Because this was kind of late into the Marvel Masterworks game. This didn't start until 2017. And I think we got one in 2018 and then... No, 2018 and 2019. We've been getting one a year. So that's pretty much what they did. They collected the first 3 Spectacular Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks and put them together for this book, adding the letter pages, of course. So the first story is about the return of Tarantula, the Hispanic villain. He's not the only Hispanic that shows up in here. So you have Jerry Conway kicking off these stories. We have the return of Kraven the Hunter. And then we have also the return of Tarantula in the 2nd and 3rd issue. We have the first appearance of Lightmaster. This was a Jim Shooter story. And now we have Sal Buscema doing the artwork. Sal Buscema does about 70% of the artwork in here. And about 30% is Jim Mooney and then a couple of other cats you may know, like John Byrne. Being one of them, and this guy, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Frank Miller. But we also see the return of the Vulture here. Again, Archie Goodwin. And the first appearance of Hitman right there. This does serve a first appearance for some, I don't know, B or C tier characters for Spider-Man. And that's okay, though, because a lot of these characters I actually enjoy later on. Hitman, I think he only appeared twice. Once in this and I think in The Punisher? Now, the story of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, issue number 6. This is pretty much a reprint of Marvel Team Up. As a matter of fact, they tell you right here, this is a reprint of Marvel Team Up number 3 with some added pages. So they just put the added pages here. This is a story by Jerry Conway and Ross Andrew doing the artwork. But it continues into this Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man story. Archie Goodwin bringing the character of Morbius into the story and tying it in with the additional pages that he added in the front and the back. So it was a pretty unique way of reprinting an issue. I mean, it was no stranger to Marvel to reprint issues back then. Just interesting that they didn't recollect it here because it's Marvel Team Up, again, is only available in Marvel Masterworks format. There are no epics and there are no omnis. So I thought it was a missed opportunity to collect the whole issue. However, if you have the Morbius Omnibus and you have the Morbius Epic Collections, they are collected in there. So, I don't know what makes the choice as to whether a book double dips or not. But I guess it saved us the extra room for the crossover. So that is a 2-parter, again written by Archie Goodwin, Sal Buscema stepping in as the artist, and showcasing a little bit of a turn in Morbius's character. Then we have Bill Mantlo step into the book as the writer. When he comes in, what he does is he kind of wraps up some loose ends of a lot of the stories that he was writing, such as the character of Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, who was introduced in the pages of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. And he's introduced here at first as an opposing force to Spider-Man, but then he becomes really good friends with Spider-Man. And remember when I said Tarantula was not the only Latino Hispanic that shows up? That's right, our very first Hispanic Marvel superhero shows up in here, and that is the White Tiger. Now, you may know another White Tiger because, well, legacy character, and somebody else takes that role, and I'm not going to talk about what ends up happening to this particular gentleman, because he plays a big part in the Spectacular Spider-Man series. Here we have the story with Medusa, and I promise I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's just interesting to see the Inhumans show up in a Spectacular Spider-Man title. We see some obscure characters show up through here. This is the Brother Power and Sister Sun story, and when I say obscure characters, I mean characters from the Amazing Spider-Man run, like Sha-Shan Wynn, who was Flash Thompson's girlfriend when he was over in Vietnam. And Flash Thompson does play a role in this. And here's the introduction of Razorback. We have the return of the Hate Monger with a little bit of a twist as to the revelation of who exactly Hate Monger is in all of this. And there's the Beetle story arc. I'm skipping some pages because now we're into the second act of the book, I guess. And there's an introduction by Mark Guggenheim. The most important part about this introduction, it is really unique. I mean, he wasn't working at Marvel at the time when these stories were coming out. He just talks about his remembering of the stories. But the most interesting part about this is, holy crap, this guy's like us. He has custom Omnis of Micronauts and ROM because he was such a big fan of those. And because of licensing, he even talks about it here. We can't have those Omnis. So he has custom bound Omnis of those two franchises that I want so bad. But because of toys and Hasbro and licensing, who knows if we're ever going to get them. I believe this is the issue that leads into Peter Parker, the contents, the Champion story arc here. So this is pretty much wrapping up the story of the Champions that ended kind of early, and it's a two-parter featuring Angel and Iceman, and just wrapping up that particular story arc. And we have the return of the Enforcers, because people were demanding those characters come back. Here's the character of the Scorpion, and then that leads into the Moon Knight 2-issue story arc. With this issue right here, which is, of course, the direct market cover by Dave Cockrum, but Mike Zeck is doing the pencils on the inside of the book. Now, this is another thing that Bill Mantlo did that was very reminiscent of what Archie Goodwin was doing in the pages of Spectacular Spider-Man at the beginning of the first year, and that is making this character that was a villain when he showed up in Werewolf by Night and turning him more towards the light, turning him more towards the side of the angels, if you will. Well, they can't all be winners, right? We also have the introduction of Hypno Hustler, who was a disco villain. Like I said, they can't all be winners. And I believe this is the story arc right here that makes Spider-Man go blind for a while. And who turns out to help him? Who's got experience being blind again? White Tiger playing a big role in Spider-Man's life. And then we have this newcomer that pencils this particular issue right here. Now, this has been collected in Frank Miller's, I believe it's in the Frank Miller, or Marvel Universe by Frank Miller, Spider-Man by Frank Miller. But this is his very first penciled work doing something outside of, the John Carter of Mars, if I'm not mistaken. But it's got inks by Frank Springer, who I just talked about Frank Springer. I mean, Frank Robbins, both of those guys were working on the Invaders Omnibus, or Invaders comics, not just the Omnibus later. But what's interesting is that his first Marvel work was drawing Daredevil, and who knew? I don't know, maybe people knew that eventually he would go on to become the writer, and then eventually, the artist, and then eventually the writer on Daredevil. Here we have the first appearance of a very important character who has a twist about him, about his secret identity, if you will. And this is Carrion. And I actually like this character. Now, the thing to note is that this is the first Carrion. He's different than the Carrions that showed up later on towards the end of Spectacular Spider-Man's first, well, not the end, but the 90s run of Spectacular Spider-Man. And he himself has a secret. Like I mentioned, White Tiger and the Iguana. Here is your introduction by Mary Jo Duffy, talking about working with these talented folks, including Bill Mantlo, and of course talking about his tragic accident that left him in a state that he needs constant help. And I know he lost his brother. I believe that was in 2020. So I'm not even sure who takes care of him. I know that when they were doing Guardians of the Galaxy, producers or somebody set up a special screening or bringing in the movies to him. So because he created the character of Rocket Raccoon. He gets some kind of earnings from that. I'm not sure, like I said, who is in charge of taking care of Bill Mantlo. So, for those that don't know, he was in a hit and run, and it was horrible because they never found out who did that. But he wrote most of the stuff here, and if you've never read it, it's really cool to see the stuff that he was doing with Peter Parker. He was introducing a lot of things to the mythos, even though a lot of people think of Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man as, the comic book that not everybody was reading. All the cool kids were reading Amazing Spider-Man. But Spectacular Spider-Man had some phenomenal stuff. I mean, that's where Roger Stern first started writing the stuff and then eventually moved on to Amazing Spider-Man. It became like the trial period if you want to become the new Amazing Spider-Man ongoing writer. First appearance of Iguana. Now, during this time, Bill Mantlo also introduced a lot of supporting cast members to Peter Parker's life because he has moved on. He is now at the Empire State University. So he's got characters in here like Mary Kane, Deb Whitman also joins the cast. And it's a pretty diverse cast. I remember reading Mary Jo Duffy's introduction, talking about the social justice issues that were going on at the time. We also have Steve Hopkins join the cast, and Philip Chang, and what was his name? Chip Martin also ends up joining the cast, or the supporting cast of these characters that all play a big part of Peter Parker's life during this time. So let's keep going through here. This is from the annual, the crossover annual, drawn by John Byrne. Oh, we have the return of the Swarm, and the Swarm was a character that appeared in, was it the Champions, I think? Almost got it mixed up with the Defenders, but I believe it was the Champions. And here's the annual number 13 of Amazing Spider-Man, artwork by John Byrne, Marv Wolfman writing the story. And the story continues into the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man annual number 1. That's why both of them are collected in here. This one written by Bill Mantlo and Rich Buckler doing the art with Jim Mooney. And by now, Jim Mooney had become the new sort of ongoing artist on the book. But Bill Mantlo still stepping, or not Bill Mantlo, I'm sorry, Sal Buscema still stepping in from time to time. Man, he loved using Morbius. That's for sure. Oh, there is the, what's his name? The Schizoid Man, I think. And there's Spider Lizard. To begin as a man. Kurt Connors becomes a big part of Peter Parker's life through these issues, too. There's the team up with Giant Man, Bill Foster, and Tom DeFalco doing a guest writing on this particular issue. And there's the letter pages. They're all in here. I love those things because they are really like a time capsule. Bill Mantlo and Mike Zeck doing the fill-in art for this. And Mike Zeck, of course, will eventually do things like Captain America and then, of course, Secret Wars. His art is just killer. And that is the final issue that's collected in here. It's the return of the Frightful Four. So you have Sandman, the Trapster, Wizard, and Electro. And that leads into the crossover with the Fantastic Four. And this one's written by Bill Mantlo, but it's got artwork by John Byrne. And that's where it ends. Let me make sure I'm not going to flip through spoilers, because there's a couple pages here that spoil like the identity of a character. But this is original artwork by our pal Sal Buscema right there. Dave Cockrum's cover. Jim Mooney, Mike Esposito doing a lot of the inks towards the beginning. There's White Tiger, character that was co-created by the late and legendary George Paydez. There's the cover by Al Milgrom, some Frank Miller original artwork. Now I know I need to skip some pages here because that shows off who the identity of a particular character is. And then we have some house ads back here. So again, the book retails for $125, and it has 928 pages. These are the covers to the reprints of the single issues, and those special editions had some new story added to them, not by Frank Miller, but by Mel Mantlo and Mark Bright. Adding to that particular special editions, the trade paperback, and the introduction to the trade paperback, the Marvel Tales that reprint those Champion story arcs, and the introduction to the hardcover of the complete Frank Miller Spider-Man from 1994. And that logo again. Let's take a look at the binding and talk about the paper. At 928 pages, that's not much of an eye. We've seen a lot bigger. So this one is printed at the iMac printer, and I swear I just stated when going over the last book that I did. What was it? It was the Aliens book, Aliens Volume 3, that it's a case by case. The paper stock in this is thinner than the Aliens Volume 3. It's not as thin as I've seen like the JMS Spider-Man, but let me just show you. Maybe it's because there's a lot more light in this particular volume than something like Aliens. When there's a lot of white pages, you can see some of the art bleed through from the opposite page. I know it does not bother everybody, but I try to be as detailed as I can be on these overviews. Because, to some people it is a deal breaker. Maybe they'll wait on a reprint from another printer. It is up to you. Yeah, like this. You can even see the word bubble from the other page. So, when we head to the back, honestly, I didn't have an issue with the book laying over. It lays over really nice on towards the front or towards the back. And since there's really not hardly any spread pages, it was fine. I didn't really notice an issue with it. So you don't even need white. It can be some bright color like this. You can see some of the art bleed through. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, if you already have this in Marvel Masterworks format, if you have the essentials, if you've never read this stuff and this is your first time reading the third Spider-Man title. And if you have any questions, leave your questions down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Patreon and Spreadshop, amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so, and the links are in the description of the video. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.